this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this kid who ended up standing before, I guess, a school council or something about his shirt because he got like reprimanded or in trouble, or adults didn't like his shirt that said there's only two genders on it. And I saw it yesterday, and I didn't share it yesterday because there's just a couple, things that we went into quite long yesterday, so I knew I wouldn't be able to get to it. But I'm mentioning it today because there's a journalist named, an independent journalist, Brian Krasenstein, who pops up, in my feed every now and then with some bad takes. But he supported something about the Church of Satan, it's a satanic symbol, having a club in a school. And so he has a post supporting them. And then people ask about, well, what about, they say something about the kids in school with the gender shirt. And he's like, well, that's different because they're hurting people's feelings. I'm like, we'll just go through the thread together when we get to that segment. So we'll talk about that. Also, there's this really amazing segment from a comic book, like a Fantastic Four comic book that I really want to show you guys. And my sister tipped me off that Matt Walsh and George Alexopoulos, he does a lot of not cartoons, but comic books and stuff that I share every now and then in my funny section or whatever. And I've had George on the show. If you like George, you can go back in my archive and look at our interview. But George brought up something that Matt Walsh said some time ago about video games. So they went back and forth a little bit. And I think it's important to talk about how if people want to compete in the culture, people kind of have to like the culture a little bit. So I want to talk about that. And also this take that I saw from this, I wouldn't say pro-life, he's pro-choice person, but he doesn't like the issue. So he tried to like come up with a compromise as he was rebutting against these two like Democrat hacks. And his rebuttal is really, really dumb. And maybe I should be more respectful. It just it doesn't make any sense. So I want to go through it and talk through it, because there's people all the time who are like, they don't like it, they don't, abortion, and I get you, I respect that, guys. I'm glad you're on that page, but it's almost like they don't want to take the hard line because they think it's just a little bit too mean for whatever reason they perceive it. So they want to come up with these compromises, and people are like, well, can't we do 12 weeks or something? And I'll respond with, I haven't heard a good argument for 12 weeks. Like, give me a good argument for it. And I've heard arguments for it. I just don't think they're good. And, I'm not, the moral authority on everything or whatever, but I just haven't heard a convincing argument because, and we'll get to it. I'll break down some of the points when we get to that segment. So, a lot of cultural issues and stuff today, but we'll break it down. Thank you guys for joining me. The people in my live, someone's watching from Maine. We got people on Facebook, people on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching me. So before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to my website, check out different articles, different videos, etc. Please check out different content on my website. Check out different merch that we have at the store. Like, I wore this yesterday. People thought it was really cool. It's people are like, oh, I really like that Frederick Douglass shirt. It's on my website. Go ahead, check it out. It's on my website. Black tea mug, etc. Also, I do have my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion, that is out and available. My youngest sister did that beautiful art there, so you guys can get it on Barnes & Noble, or you guys can get it on Amazon. And some people might be asking, there's a bit of a troll that was on one of my YouTube posts today, and they said, I would get more trolls if I would get less trolls if I just stuck to the facts and not to like the beliefs things. And the actual post that I had nothing to do with religion. The only thing that was a bit religious. Nothing was religious, but at the bottom, I was just like, hey, I wrote this book. Check it out. And so the reason why I wrote the book, and I can even sum this up yesterday, I saw a live, maybe it was 2 days ago, but I saw a live and there was a pro-life person who was hosting the debate on TikTok, and he had someone else who was, there debating with him. And then there's a pro-choice person that they were debating against, and the pro-choice person was just like awful with her debate, and she just like kept going around and around in circles. And she just got stuck on this point, like, well, you guys are just arguing this from a religious standpoint. You just believe it because of religion. And nobody mentioned religion. Nobody brought up a scripture. Nobody said anything about God. No one said we're against abortion because it makes baby Jesus cry. Nobody said anything like that. And the person who was hosting the debate kept saying the girl who was debating with him isn't religious. So they're like, how is our opinion religious? And she's like, it's just religious. It's just religious. I'm like, it sounds like you guys are a bit religious in your belief that everyone holds this stance because it's religious. So even if I would just kind of stick with very secular sort of arguments and the fact and biology and, philosophy and talked about rights and stuff, people would always still bring up religion, and then they'd say something that, bastardize the Bible, and life starts at first breath, and there's abortion potions in the Bible, all kinds of weird stuff. So eventually I just made a book that was not only a defense of the gospel, but also something that, like, hey, the believers who don't know how to kind of craft their arguments, like, here's something. But also it covers science, it covers philosophy, and why we need like objective morality, or need to at least act like it. Like I wrote a post, I said, I don't need you to actually literally value the unborn. I just need you to not kill them. Like, maybe I can never get you there. I can try, but if you can't arrive there, like, logically, you can look at my points and be like, you know what, she's kind of right. But if you can't, like, in your heart of hearts, like, bring yourself to care, that's okay. Like, on principle, still at least value equal rights. So, I make a lot of those different arguments in the book. I cover like the exceptions that people talk about, life of the mother, sexual assault, all that stuff. So it's a very expansive book. I could probably write another just without religion, but I still think it's important to defend what you believe, and I hope, especially since there's a lot of pro-choice Christians out there, I really, really sincerely hope that it helps a lot of people, and brings them closer to the Lord, brings them closer to the right side of history, and save some babies. So it's available. Please go pick it up. And I'm so happy about this cover. My sister did such a good job. If Tina's in the chat watching at some point in time, just go ahead and say you're here and go follow Tina, because she does live streaming and stuff with her art content. She's amazing. So anyway, check out that stuff. And if you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs a stream, costs to run my website, all that good stuff. So if you would like to support in that way, you can go directly to the website and do that. Otherwise, or other words, other options, I guess I'll say, is if you're watching on Facebook, you can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you can do super chat and other stuff like that. But if you'd like to go directly to the website, there's a donate button. God bless you if you can. Thank you guys for watching the chat, people watching live, people watching back, etc. So let's jump into it. So like I said, there's this funny post today, and it's funny because of eventually where it goes. So let me share my screen for a moment so I can show you guys where this whole nonsense leads. So like I said, Brian Krasenstein is a journalist. So here we go. Let me put myself, I don't know how well you guys can. Okay, so I retweeted that, kind of giving it away a bit. Let me go here. So he said, a federal judge in Pennsylvania just ruled that the Satan Club, sponsored by the Satanic Temple, must be permitted to convene at schools. The judge who made the ruling, Judge John M. Gallagher, stated, when confronted with a challenge to free speech, the government's first instinct must be to forward expression rather than quash it. Particularly when the content is controversial or inconvenient. Nothing less is consistent with the express purpose of the American government to secure the core innate rights of its people. So, For those who will now say I support the devil, and this is I guess the guy just writing, note that the Satan Club does not educate on Satanism or seek to sway club goers toward its ideology. Rather, it promotes rationalism and encourages comprehension of the natural world. The program opposes teaching religious practices in schools. The Satanic Temple renounces supernatural beliefs and views Satan as a figurative representation of defiance against authority rather than otherworldly entity. Is that all authority or just like the one from above? Because I could think of reasons why you wouldn't want to have it in school then, besides like, you know, the obvious Satan stuff. But in other words, the club teaches people to be good people based on morals and rational thought, not supernatural stories and claims. I support the Satan Club 100%. Thoughts. So that is that's his post supporting the Satan Club. You know, I saw this because Ben Shapiro retweeted it. He didn't quote retweet it. He just retweeted it. Like, no comment necessary. Just here's what it is. Okay. So, that there's a statement and then someone said, but you can't wear a t-shirt to public school that says there are only two genders. And he says, any t-shirt that seeks to harm the way others feel, I think is appropriately banned from schools. School isn't a political event. Students are there to learn and feel welcomed. So he supports the Satan Club because it's about rational thought, the natural world, not religion, all that stuff. Yet, if some kid wears a shirt that says there are only two genders, that's just hurting feelings, and that is political. Now, maybe they're wearing it for political reasons, but if the Church of Satan is entitled to their First Amendment rights and privileges, and you support them on the basis of that, why doesn't this kid get to do that? It's just so silly. And it is a belief. The gender identity, all that ideology, whatever, that's a philosophy thing. Gender and sex, the etymology of the word has people using them interchangeably. You know, they're, even if you try to separate them, they're obviously meaningfully intertwined. Sex and gender exist on a binary. There's a ova, there's a sperm. Your sex is determined within the womb. So there's nothing really to argue about. So someone wearing a shirt that's saying there's only two genders, and people being mad about it is very silly. But to promote the Church of Satan because they're the rational ones who want to stomp out beliefs, like religious beliefs, but you want to defend the gender cult, right? And you want to get rid of kids wearing shirts that say there's only two genders. That seems a little obvious there. Very, very obvious, Brian, what you're supporting there. Seems so obvious. A little too on the nose. So many people who are like anti-religious or say they don't believe in God or whatever, they are pretty religious in their pursuit of anti-religion, though. Like, I don't believe in Santa Claus, but, you know, I don't bother people too much on Christmas about it, you know? I do think it's a bit much for people to go through this long con with their kids. My mom was always like, why would I give some white man the credit of buying these toys? And then anyway, so I just don't get it. The magic of the Santa Claus and line to all your kids are deceiving them, whatever. But I don't make entire TikTok personalities about it, writing books about it and all that stuff. That just seems a little weird. But there's so many people who really claim to not believe in God, who are devoted to being his number one fan, like a friend of me or hater. you would think that the absence of belief would be freeing then, if you believe that religion is, such a burden. So why are you still pressed about it? So anyway, this is hilarious. Now to actually show you the child who wore the shirt, and so he spoke for himself quite well. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys this his video talking about his shirt. 1 second.
At Nichols Middle School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I never thought that the shirt I wore to school on March 21st would lead me to speak with you today. On that Tuesday morning, I was taken out of gym class to sit down with two adults for what turned out to be a very uncomfortable talk. I was told that people were complaining about the words on my shirt, that my shirt was making some students feel unsafe. Yes, words on a shirt made people feel unsafe. They told me that I wasn't in trouble, but it sure felt like I was. I was told that I would need to remove my shirt before I could return to class. When I nicely told them that I didn't want to do that, they called my father. Thankfully, my dad supported my decisions and came to pick me up. What did my shirt say? 5 simple words. There are only 2 genders. Nothing harmful, nothing threatening, just a statement I believe to be a fact. I have been told that my shirt was targeting a protected class. Who is this protected class? Are their feelings more important than my rights? I don't complain when I see pride flags and diversity posters hung throughout the school. Do you know why? Because others have a right to their beliefs just as I do. Not one person, staff, or student told me that they were bothered by what I was wearing. Actually, just the opposite. Several kids told me that they supported my actions and that they wanted one too. I was told that the shirt was a disruption to learning. No one got up and stormed out of class. No one burst into tears. I'm sure I would have noticed if they had. I experience disruptions to my learning every day. Kids acting out in class are a disruption, yet nothing is done. Why do the rules apply to one, yet not another? I feel like these adults were telling me that it wasn't okay for me to have an opposing view. Their arguments were weak, in my opinion. I didn't go to school that day to hurt feelings or cause trouble. I have learned a lot from this experience. I learned that a lot of other students share my view. I learned that adults don't always do the right thing or make the right decisions. I know that I have a right to wear a shirt with those 5 words. Even at 12 years old, I have my own political opinions, and I have a right to express those opinions. Even at school, this right is called the First Amendment to the Constitution. My hope in being here tonight is to bring the school committee's attention to this issue. I hope that you will speak up for the rest of us so we can express ourselves without being pulled out of class. Next time, it may not only be me. There might be more students that decide to speak out. Thank you for your time and good night.
Thank you.
Based. So great. Well, I don't know if he's a great kid, but kudos to him for standing up for himself, for having the courage to wear that shirt. And he said, if what he's saying is true, that, he there's flags everywhere. I don't say anything. Other people are expressing what they believe in. So how come I can't express what I believe in? How is that not valid? But when he said they didn't have good argument, I thought their arguments was weak. That's when I laughed. I thought that was pretty funny. Like kindred spirit there. Yeah. So people being so offended by this very true thing is just wild. So there's so many arguments. People ask often, and I'm keep meaning to do like a long form video about this, but asking like, why is it that I keep talking about this issue with the gender ideology or the trans women and Dylan Mulvaney and all those folks, etc. And I'm like, well, people say they just want to be left alone, and I'm like, Dylan does not want to be left alone. These people don't want to be left alone. They want to be well, there's plenty of people who want to be left alone and don't appreciate kind of the circus of everything. And I know, because I have trans people who follow me who appreciate speaking out against the circus, and they just kind of want to be left alone. There's people out there who do experience serious discomfort in their bodies, and they're just trying to kind of figure out the best way to live their lives. And my hope and prayer for them is that they can do that by just being in their own body and not having to do something to their body and find peace some kind of other way. But there's other people who are going along with the social contagion, jumping on a trend in a train, and there's people who uplift it, and they have it celebrated everywhere. They have the flags, they have it on TV, they have it, Drew Barrymore on her knees talking to Dylan Mulvaney when he's like clearly just making a caricature of women, so that's where they're going. So when people say that they just want to be left alone, I'm like, that's not the truth, because this kid is just wearing a shirt that says there's only two genders, as he said, saying something that he believes to be true, and people are saying that it's hurtful. And you have a left-wing journalist who's saying it's totally legit if the Satan Club wants to have a club in your school, because they're rational people, but how dare you wear a t-shirt that hurts people's feelings about gender? No, you choose to have your feelings hurt, and be offended. Some people were mad at me because I did a video about J.K. Rowling and the statement she's said, and I can't find anything that she said that's transphobic. I can find things that people don't like and choose to be offended by, but that's something that they choose to be offended by. It's not offensive to say that if you're born a man, then you are a man, and that's not going to change. That's not offensive. I can understand you're offended. It is what it is, I'm trying to think of a relevant example. I was thinking you can say, Christine, you won't fit into a size such and such. I'm like, I'm not offended by that. It's just the truth. So I don't know. I can't think of a relevant example, but just because there's a fact that people might not like doesn't mean that it's false. If it's true, it's true. And then the question is, what are you going to do with the truth? And it should set you free. That's what it should do. If something that's true is upsetting you so much, that sounds like a you problem, and you need to analyze why that is. So, see a super chat. Thank you very much. Looks like it's from Lex. Said, thanks for speaking out. More people need to say enough is enough. I think if more people do just speak up, you'll start to see it die down. But as long as people believe it's kind of like a bully pulpit, and they're too afraid to speak out, or they're too compromised to speak out, then they're just going to continue to be afraid to do so. So, I mean, people have written to me, said because of their jobs and stuff, they can't speak out. And I know people who will lose their jobs and other things, or the licenses for different stuff, if they speak out on these issues. So my heart goes out to people in those positions. The price of free speech is really high, as Scott Adams said a couple, I guess some months ago, but it was back in February, I suppose. And not everybody can pay it. Maybe we should all be willing to pay it, but I sympathize with people who aren't in a position to say something, but if I can say something, I will. And please make sure that you follow me on the website and just put it in your email, because of course big tech doesn't always like when you speak the truth. So I'll continue to do so wherever I can for as long as I can, but blacktnews.com will always still exist. So there's even shirts that I want to make, and I'm like, will I lose my whole platform for my shirt stuff if I make a shirt or whatever? I will put on some buttons because I got a button machine. So we'll at least do that. I keep meaning to make some buttons, but I would have to revamp my whole website a bit once I put those on. So that's why I've delayed, but people love pins. So I'll get on making those. But yeah, it's important to speak out, and if I can, I will continue to do that. And what's funny about Brian being in support of the Satan Club and noting that the Satan Club doesn't teach anything about Satan. If you've seen what's the movie with Kevin Spacey? That's a big spoiler alert for the end of that movie. But when he's the greatest trick Satan ever pulled was convincing everyone he doesn't exist. So that's kind of what it is with the Satan Club. They're like, we don't believe in Satan, we just believe in anti-God. Celebration of you rejecting that authority. Yeah, and Satan is, I'm religious. I know not everybody who watches me is, but I'm like, sounds about right. You know, Satan doesn't require worship. He just really likes you not worshiping God. So there's that. There's that. So um kind of giving the game away when the whole it was the Grammys when they had Sam Smith talking about his song, the Satan song or whatever, the unholy song, and they did like the ritual and it was like demonic kind of imagery. People were like, oh my gosh, literally demonic sacrifices on stage, etc. Blah blah blah, and Ben Shapiro has some really good commentary about it, and he noted just like it's not that these people literally believe in Satan, it's just that Satan is a stand-in for the things that they stand for. So I'm not surprised that Brian is pro Satan Club, but in that pro Satan Club, and to contrast that with him being against like the nature of reality of there's two genders, the sex is binary, etc. That kind of speaks to like people just being upset about the design. Like people like I don't know if you guys have ever seen videos of people in Congress talking about like they need puberty blockers because you're torturing these kids by making them go through puberty. It's like who is doing what? I'm not doing anything. That's just like your body going through its natural process, which is very normal and necessary for people to do that, to really discover themselves and get a hold of who they are. But you denying them the chance of going through puberty, you're doing some irreversible damage to that person. So and no one is at fault. That's just how your body is. So you're not mad at us. Like, you're mad at nature, you're mad at design, whether it's like you want to say that it's evolution or God's design. You're mad at design. You're not mad at me for saying that women are women and men are men. You're mad at the actual fact of reality, and I can't help you there. I can help you try to see the light, but you have to embrace it. You have to one day come to terms with your body. There's one detransitioner that I follow, Kat Katizan, and her story is it just really hits me because she became transgender, but she's a singer. And so one day she tried to do like a high note that would have been easy for her in any other circumstance. But because she was on testosterone, which they gave to her pretty easily, subscribed to her, she realized, you know, that she had really changed her voice. And some people were like, duh, you're taking testosterone. Like, of course your voice is going to change. But it didn't hit her about what kind of damage this would do to something that she really, really loves. So there were other things that also signaled her to kind of like draw back and detransition. But I'm like, the thought, and some of you follow me enough, you know that I sing. And the idea of your voice, something that is I think is a blessing from God, and I use it to bless other people, and that being gone because you had discomfort and people rushed you into this, affirmed this delusion, and then you almost lose something that is so a part of you. It's heartbreaking. So I'm glad she turned back, and she sounds great, you know. So if you want to follow her, Kat is her name. She's actually started a fun. I love to get her on the show because she's actually starting an organization to help detransitioners with legal fees and stuff to sue people. And I think once we start suing a lot of people for this stuff, you'll see a lot of stuff start to roll back because a lot of people are in it for the money. So once there's some consequences to some stuff, people will maybe start, get some sense all of a sudden. And there's another detransitioner. I don't know. I don't remember their channel, but one day I was watching on YouTube, and they talked about how they hated their voice, and they were, as a female, they hated their voice, and then they got on testosterone, and eventually they ended up detransitioning, and now they just hate that they have a man voice. And to me, that's just so heartbreaking. To go to back like a spiritual level, I know I keep dipping in and out and stuff. I'm just like, that's just like the devil to get to miss you. The thing that you'll miss is the thing that you hate, so you give it up. So my heart went out to her. But she detransitioned. So anyway, yeah, I think it's an important topic, and I'll continue to talk about it. Thank you again for another super chat, Lex. And you live in Canada. I can't really speak out. Yeah, Canada is a mess with a lot of stuff right now. um, but I kudos to everyone who does. Abigail Schreier, which by the way, I don't think I mentioned this yesterday. Chelsea Clinton had retweeted an article about book banning, right? Chelsea Clinton as in the daughter of President Bill Clinton. And she was complaining about book banning. But in the article, the picture they use for the book that is banned is like genderqueer. And genderqueer has some graphic stuff in it that's not appropriate. And everyone's just like, ma'am, like, are you coming out in favor of this like child pornographic material? And I retweeted it, and I was just like father, like daughter. That's creepy. Like, who is counseling these people? Like, they must have PR, or just, where's your good sense? Where's your good sense? So you know nothing about this book. You have heard no one speak about it at all. You didn't even look it up at all before you decided to retweet what's in it. It is not buried somewhere deep in the article. The picture for the article that she retweeted is of this book with all this heinous stuff in it. And Abigail Schreier, as people were talking about book banning, she's like, my book is, they try to get rid of my book in Canada all the time in other places. Why isn't my book, and talking about irreversible damage, on banned book lists? I'm like, that's a very good point. but people aren't upset about her book being banned, or people weren't upset about Amazon getting rid of When Harry Met Sally. I don't know if that's still banned or if that's still taken off their store. And that really freaked me out as someone who writes books and stuff, that Amazon will just be like, we gotta take this off. It's like hate speech or something. It's like, no, it's a scientific, book that's compassionate toward this issue. Which Chad Felix Green, he lives his life as a gay man, but he has dysphoria. And he said he read that book and it like spoke to him, So people being so upset about these things because they hurt some people's feelings. Again, if you're upset by the truth, that's something you have to reconcile with it sooner or later. You can say my truth, whatever. But if you're living a lie, you're living a lie. And sooner or later, you'll come up against a wall, smack right into it, the truth. And that's what happened to Kat Kadison. She said eventually, just like biology hit her right in the face. And as she was trying to transition, she kept getting sicker and sicker. And a lot of these people are getting sick. And she had to come to grips with reality. And that's what everyone has to do eventually. Anyway, moving on. There's this, not really moving on, but kind of, well, yeah, this is a different point, but one of the people who I follow on Twitter had tweeted out this still from this Fantastic Four comic book, and it is so perfect. It is so perfect about our society, and it just sums it up so amazingly. So the Thing, Ben Grimm, who's like the big rock guy on Fantastic Four. Michael Chiklis played him in where's it? Chiklis played him in the original. Actually, there was another movie, right? The one where Chris Evans was in it, and too, and Jessica Alba, and Eon Gruford. I can't think of his name or how to say his name, but he was a great Mr. Fantastic. In that film series that came out 2000s, it was a long time ago. So that's the Thing. And so he's on a talk show and he's talking about his life, etc., and the impact that he wants to have on his world. And he sees this, he's talking to, I guess, a group of mutants. I haven't picked up like X-Men for a while, so I'm not really sure everything is going on. And he's like, well, I'm Rock, you're Rock. Like, look at us. Like, we're here. And so this little still here just sums up everything so perfectly, as I said. So here we go. She says, respectfully, sir, you were a cis white male until cosmic rays turned you into the Thing. Your societal estrangement, while distressing, I'm sure, was relatively short-lived. These days, you're a world-famous superhero. You've had dalliances with models and starlets. You're currently wedded to a 2-time National Medal of the Arts winner. I was born like this and abandoned in a dumpster as an infant. I lived in the wild like an animal until I was 10. False equivalencies help no one, sir. Thank you. And so after this panel, he was just kind of like dumbfounded a bit, and another woke person gets up and starts like trying to lecture him, and then he gets angry, and then he like diffuses the situation, and he diffuses it because like Reed like put something in his ear to like, if something heated happens, to just kind of split out some philosophy. So he diffused the situation. But what's perfect about this panel, and if you don't know much about comic books and or Ben Grimm and stuff, his life when he became the Thing was hard. Like the Fantastic Four did become celebrities, sure, and they're like beloved, unlike the X-Men, who are like, you know, just everyone hates the X-Men, right? But he wasn't like everyone. He couldn't turn his powers on and off. He's a lovable guy with blue eyes, you know. People love the Thing, and he has a great attitude. That's part of why people love him. If you were like a, you know, jerk like this lady here, maybe, you know, that's why people don't warm up to you and treat you badly. I'm not saying that's why they treated, obviously she had like things that she had to cope with life, but her bitterness ain't making her likable. Okay, you gotta shed the negative and start trying to live the rest of your life in a positive direction, not trying to crap on everyone. So she sees him as, you're famous now, but even before you were famous, you were still a white cis male, so you had that privilege. So when Ben Grimm became the Thing, he had a fiance who left him. They put that scene in like the movie, and there was a bridge scene when they saved everyone, and then because he was trying to reach out to it was his wife. Yeah, I said wife, right? Did I say wife or fiance? His wife left him. And she, you know, had the ring, and she just left it on the bridge when she saw him. And that was like the big like issue of the film, was that Mr. Fantastic was trying to figure out what was going on with their powers. Johnny's like, he just loves it. You know, he's like a rock star doing all kinds of stuff. The chicks love him, etc. But Ben is just kind of hauled up inside, wanting to get back to normal. And Reed Richards is, you know, pursuing his romance kind of with Jessica Alba, Sue Storm. And Ben is watching all this go down, and he's just like, I want to be normal. I want to get back to my life. And so eventually at the end of the film, he's able to use his powers to, you know, to take out Dr. Doom and save everybody. So he comes to grips with himself. And then he also gets a girlfriend who likes who he is. But in the next film, there's a scene where they're talking about like, how does him and Alicia get like physical? And they haven't figured it out because he's made of rocks. And so Johnny Storm, in that film, he comes in contact with the Silver Surfer. And so when he touches different people with Fantastic Four, he switches their powers all of a sudden. So he switched with Ben, and so he became Rock, and all of a sudden he was ugly, and it was a funny scene. So he actually like helped touch Ben so he could allow them to have a moment of intimacy, because they believed like the world was gonna end because Galactus was coming. So he had all these struggles to go through as a character, and with his appearance, you know, with being the freak out of everyone else looks normal and has cool superpowers. Ben is permanently transformed to be who he is, right? And so she, in that way that they can relate, but she's just looking at who he is now. She cares nothing about all the struggles that he had in between. All she can see is her pain in the past. All she can see is her current pain. So when she looks at someone else who's better off than her, all she sees is privilege. So, like, this is what's in comic books right now. This woke stuff, the cisgender, blah, 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 etc. You know, you guys know that I don't like cisgender, which, by the way, go to Black Teen News, read my article on why cis is a slur. You know, I think, you know, it's probably more offensive for women, probably because trans women or men who identify as women, which maybe we should just make it so that we say that more often. Men who identify as women rather than trans women take the time to just say the extra stuff. They're really aggressive. They're really aggressive. So I'm sure men, and I've seen men upset and annoyed with cis too, but women who identify as men are not as vocal and aggressive than the men who identify as women. And maybe because men aren't gonna take all the garbage they push, but men who identify as females believe that they can just overrun us women. And unfortunately, a lot of times they get proven correct, you know? And then when they come up against some opposition, then they're ticked off. That's why Dylan Mulvaney's like, I think it should be illegal for these articles to call me a man over and over and over again. It's like, that's what you are, sir. That's what you are. And if you post some stuff on TikTok, they'll take your videos down. Which, by the way, a video I posted on the other day did get taken down on TikTok because they don't like the opposition. They don't like the pushback on this topic. But this frame is just absolutely perfect to sum up our world today. That all they see, if they see you doing well today, they just resent you. They're angry about their pain, their circumstance, what they've been through, and all they can see is their hurt, and they don't care what you've overcome. Some people, I was having a conversation with my sister today, and I said, some people, they don't want to be healed. They just want to be pitied. They don't want to be healed from their trauma. They just want to be pitied because they like the power of being a victim. And I think that's really sad. Whether it's, childhood trauma or church hurt or whatever it is, so many people, and I'm not saying that people don't have legitimate reasons to be wounded, but that's no excuse to not try to overcome and seek healing. But many people don't want to be healed. I talked yesterday about CRT, and I mentioned that a lot of these people pushing racism or CRT to fight racism or whatever, they're lying. Many of them want racism. CRT is pushing racism because they benefit from it. The reason why, and I don't know if I said this live yesterday, but I said it in TikTok, CRT mentions that it's different than the civil rights movement, because civil rights is about, moving things forward, making progress moving forward. But CRT is about looking at everything, looking at our foundations in the past and really like tearing things down and rebuilding things kind of in their image. So the reason I would say that the reason why they're not like the civil rights movement and even criticize it at times is because they don't want to move forward. They want to use racism as a tool, as a weapon to tear down institutions they don't like, So a lot of these people who you hear talk about all these issues and problems, they don't want to solve them. And that goes for right or left, but there's plenty of people, they have no intention of actually solving problems. Even some people on the right who maybe want to solve some problems are so slow-footed on things like the boycott of Budweiser and stuff. You see like elitist people who, kind of the elite in the right wing, who are still in the support of Budweiser because they get a lot of donations from them. And, I guess I do question when enough is enough. I don't drink beer, so this thing is like, other than talking about it, it affects me none whatsoever. I was never in a position to boycott it, but I don't know when you guys want to like call it done, but probably when people are waiting for some kind of other, admission of guilt, some kind of statement that actually says something. They did issue a statement, but it didn't really say much. So people want to see a turn from this gender stuff, this craze, this ideology. But there's some people who are really weak-willed about it and just kind of want to make a space. But you can't make a space with people who want to like totally overrun you if given the opportunity, like Leah Thomas, William Thomas and stuff, who says, well, if you support me as a woman, then I should be able to swim and compete and play. He knows he's not a woman. He knows he has an obvious biological advantage. But if he's saying, if you play along, you got to go all the way. And I don't terribly disagree with him. they, you know, because if you're only pretending, if you're only going so far, you're admitting that you're pretending. So you got to draw a line somewhere, and so draw the line right on the truth and stand on it. But this panel is perfect. Marvel is garbage. All this stuff is such garbage right now. All this stuff is such garbage. So moving on. With that in mind, there was a bit of a beef between George Alexopoulos, who's one of my sister's like favorite comic book artist right now. Actually, we like for her birthday last year, we commissioned a photo of her. A painting that he did was so great. It's hanging up in her house. Her favorite movie is Pride and Prejudice, so he like drew her as, you know, Pride and Prejudice kind of form. It's really good. So he found an old tweet of Matt Walsh came into his view or whatever. So he commented on it. So they went back and forth a little bit. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit. So Matt said, video games are a sacred cow because our society is filled with adults who are obsessed with them. That's why we all pretend insanely that there is nothing wrong with or disturbing about a child spending all day killing people in a virtual world. So George said, video games are a medium, not a genre, you bearded puritanical Philistine. If your child is only playing games where he's murdering people, get educated and buy him Minecraft, Rocket League, Mario Maker, better yet, play games together and bond. Debate me, Matt. So he went on to list a couple other different video games, and then Matt was like, is there a reason why you're randomly starting an argument with something I tweeted 5 years ago? Did you really have to go back that far to find a tweet of mine to whine about? Which I'm sure George didn't have to, but it just popped. The reason why I did is because he popped in his feed. And so a lot of people thought that was kind of like a weak comeback from Matt, because either you still hold the same view or you don't. And I didn't see him saying like that he did or he didn't, but I would assume Matt probably still holds the same view. So yeah, he asked like, did it change in the past 5 years? And he said 5 years ago or yesterday, wrong is wrong. Happy to discuss this topic in greater depth if you still hold this incorrect position. And he's willing to debate and go fly out to a studio, whatever. And he says, so you sincerely want to have a conversation and your way of starting is to dig up a 5-year-old tweet to call me a bearded puritanical Philistine. Do you honestly think that's the most effective way to start a constructive dialogue? So, it's not a constructive way to start a dialogue, and which he apologized for saying he had a beard. So, not for calling him a puritanical Philistine, but I don't know why the Philistine thing, but puritanical is probably a bit on the nose. So I don't know if that part is so offensive, but people are asking why George is like going back and forth with Matt about this stuff, and the video game comment coupled with like he said anime was satanic not too long ago, is worth kind of noting that Daily Wire and other folks like that want to build an alternative media, but it kind of seems like these people don't appreciate or like the mediums that much. Like if there's a quick way to kind of get some money, they'll be like, oh, Hershey's made some chocolate that's woke. Let's make some chocolate ourselves and start a business that way. But, they'll do something like that. So I'm not saying they wouldn't make a comic book or an anime or something if they could, but especially if it was something quick that they could produce or something to kind of get in that sort of sphere and make a buck and own the libs or whatnot. But if we don't compete in that space, people are just going to keep going to what we have. And people are dying for alternatives, not like literally dying, but people really do want alternatives. One reason why my sisters like Korean drama so much is because they're not filthy. There might be some, but a lot of them are like, they take like 10 episodes to like hold hands. And oh my gosh, when they hug and the music starts playing and there's the embrace, it's not like, the raunchy kind of stuff you see on HBO or even like CW and other places. Sometimes they want something wholesome, and a lot more and people do want wholesome good content, because some of the wholesome content that you get, like if you go like on a Christian app or something, aren't good. So people do want alternatives, and Daily Wire has their stuff to make alternatives. But when you like keep downing culture of what people really like anime, like there's things not to like about anime, but anime is like, you guys just saw the panel from an American comic book, and the state of American comics are just dismal. They're not doing well like they used to and stuff. So you have American comic books. Manga is kicking their butts. Anime is just a cartoon form, adaptations of their manga. It's just Japanese cartoons, but usually they start off as manga. It's just their comic books, and then they adapt them into the comic they adapt the manga into the anime, and the animes, they feed the manga, and the mangas feed the anime. They get people interested. People find one medium, like, oh, let me go to the other. It's not like our comic books today. Like if people watch the movies, they don't go run out and buy comic books. Our American comic books are like, the industry is just not doing well. But manga's kicking their butt. So there's a medium that people really, 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 really like and enjoy, and then you just crap on it. You crap on the anime. Video games, people love video games. I would love to write a video game, like a script for a video game one day, or to have a video game and stuff. That would be awesome. And you know what? I used to say that, you guys know that I write all these books. I used to say that I wanted all these live action stuff. I wanted my stuff on the CW because that was what I was watching. I don't watch anything on the network anymore. I haven't for some years now. But that used to be my idea, my things that I wanted. Now I'm like, actors are so messy and studios are so messy. Like, I'd rather just animate it. It seems easier to get something, it takes the time to actually make the work and stuff. But as far as like producing something that's true to itself, that seems like the best way to do it. So crapping on like entire mediums isn't a good way to do stuff. If conservatives are really interested in building like a parallel economy and really building up the culture, and if you're not serious about that, then we got a problem there, because people are just going to continue to turn to what they have if there's not something to compete. Eric July, Young Ripa, oh gosh, what's his handle? Eric July is his name. He has his own website and YouTube channel. He was with the Blaze. I don't know if he's still with the Blaze, but he started his own comic book, and he made like over $3 million when it launched. It was insane. And so I saw him as his comic book, and his thing is, we're not going to do woke, we're just going to do good stories. We're not going to just revamp stuff or have all these parallel alternate universes and multiverses and stuff. We're just going to tell a good story. And a lot of people supported him because, one, they want some good stories that aren't woke. Two, they like his content and they want to support him and his vision for building a parallel economy. So I went ahead and I bought, his book and stuff. So I'm glad. And one thing that George says, and I don't know if he said this on Twitter, if he said this in my interview with him. He said, if you're going to complain about things, don't just complain. He's like, have some kind of alternative that you can uplift. And I'm like, that's really good advice. That's really good advice. So, so when Matt talked about the video games here, he had a whole list of alternatives. Like if you don't want to have your kids playing this stuff when they're just doing shoot 'em up games, you could do all these things where they're world building and doing all these other kind of stuff as well. So, Matt's someone who he likes to have his kids just outside playing, with sticks and building stuff in the woods or whatnot. And, that's fine. But, before people play video games, people like to play cowboys and Indians and pretend to scalp each other. So shoot each other with guns. So, but that doesn't mean that stuff is what's making people evil or whatever. And as far as like adults playing video games, my dad would spend a lot of time playing video games, not because he didn't have other things to do. Like he raised kids, he took care of a church and stuff, but it was a good release for him to do that. People have all kinds of ways that they release stress and energy or whatever. We play Marvel vs. Capcom. We had a lot of games or whatever growing up, but mostly because he liked to play them and we would like to play them with him. He did not like when we beat him though. Oh my gosh, if we beat my dad, he would make us play over and over and over again until he had beaten us a sufficient amount of times. And sometimes we're like, Dad, I gotta go to school in the morning. And but he just could not take to lose. He couldn't do much about my brother though, because my brother was just way better. My brother would actually take the time to learn all the movesets and stuff. My dad, what he wanted to do, he just wanted to get like a character like Cable and get a big gun and just shoot. Like, I don't even know why he played games. Other than, he said it relieved his stress, you know, and he just could kind of zone out while he did it. But like there was no really skill in how he played video games or whatever. You know, I just basically want to play them kind of start to finish to go through the story. You know, my sister said I kind of like abuse the story. I just kind of rushed through it, and she does all these side missions or whatever. She's a bigger gamer than I am, so people enjoy video games for different reasons, and not all of them like, you know, Grand Theft Auto or something. So I think I don't believe Matt at all ended up addressing this point of whether he still believed what he originally said. And a lot of people still actually agree with him. A lot of people think that what he said was silly, but I think you can't just keep crapping on the culture if you have to build alternatives. And I know that's what Daily Wire wants to do in some regard. But obviously, I guess they're not getting it in the video game industry. So if conservatives want everyone to not pay into woke folks, you know, when people boycott, they're going to want an alternative. That's just the truth. So George actually has a comic book that he's working on and just did it like an Indiego thing or GoFundMe or something. And they like fundraised and got their amount that they wanted within like hours. It was insane. But good on them. Good on them. I'm glad that other people, even though if it's not Matt or whatever, are building the culture, and they do that. I make content too. Those of you who don't know, I write books. I have 16 published books now, but 2 of them are nonfiction. The rest are fiction. Here's my photo with all my babies. So anyway, moving on. The other day, I saw this TikTok. A lot of people were replying to Chris Mowry and Harry Sisson. I think is how you say his name. Harry Sisson. And they're Democratic paid shills. They're young kids. They work for a talent management company that gets paid by the DNC. So the DNC has paid them like $200, not them directly, the kids, but the agency has. If you look through the FEC like report, they paid the company like $200,000, and both of them are paid under the management. Like, do we know more than that? No, but they're as far as like the payments or how it got in their bank account or whatever. No, but we know that's kind of what they do. Their whole entire like career on TikTok has been to be Democratic shills, and we've all kind of known it, but they're kind of denying it. So I saw someone, I think they're kind of new on TikTok, at least popping up in my feed, but they're like a gay, and I mentioned that because it's in his profile. He's like a gay, I don't think conservative, but right-leaning kind of person. So anyway, he did this rebuttal to them, and I want to talk about his rebuttal because he said something about abortion that was just didn't make any sense in my opinion. So I like the rest of his video pretty much, but that's where I think it went off of rails. So that's what I want to address, because there's a lot of people who have these moderate stances, and I don't think a lot of them pan out. So we'll go through why.
Closely as they destroy our environment, take rights away from women, do nothing about kids being shot in schools.
Hold on, I'm gonna start it over.
Gen Z is watching the Republican Party extremely closely as they destroy our environment, take rights away from women, do nothing about kids being shot in schools, and if they think they can give the middle finger to our generation and get away with it, they're sorely mistaken.
Wait a second, I have biceps. Does that mean I'm right? I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that every single thing they've ever read has come from a left-wing source framed against the right. So how can you believe anything that they say? Like, what's the right doing to hurt the environment? Denying climate change? Newsflash! Nobody thinks that climate change is not happening. But climate change is three things. Is it happening? How bad is it? And what do we do about it? Mm-hmm. Is it happening? Yes, everyone agrees. How bad is it? The delta between the predictions are so wide. The Republicans act as if it's the best case scenario, and the Democrats act as if it's the worst case scenario. And then the third thing, what do we do about it? Again, very political, not settled at all, not settled science. And the Democrats have decided that the solution they're always going to go with is solar and wind power, when nuclear is out there waiting in the wings, waiting to be, it's totally carbon neutral. Why are we against nuclear power? And they act as if solar power is magic. It's not. It takes thousands and thousands of batteries for one solar farm. Each battery needs to be replaced every 10 years, and the carbon output of each battery is the same as driving 600,000 miles in a car. And Republicans are taking away women's rights. I mean, I guess they're trying to take away one right, but...
So, before moving on to the abortion segment, I want to say he was pretty darn spot on about the environmental thing, like the climate change, like you could say it's happening. Well, how much are we contributing? What do we actually do about it? Do we bankrupt everybody, force them into situations where they financially can't cope, or or do we just try to make technological advancements to cope with everything? How come people don't want to do nuclear? Because it sounds scary. Why is that? Why is it just people want to focus on the solar and the wind farms, which kill birds? And don't store like the energy great from what I know of it. So the question isn't that you just want to do something. A lot of Democrats are like, do something. Literally, when they talk about guns, they just yell, do something. Like, okay, is the thing that you're suggesting going to work? Like, is it going to work, and does it infringe on people's rights? Those are two really important questions. So these kids who are just like, do something. What happens if we do something bad? Or what happens when people just do something and it doesn't really help, but they just did it to buy your votes and your loyalty so they can continue to do things that are really bad. So I thought he nailed that section, but going to the next section about women's rights.
This issue, it's like, what's my choice? I can choose between oppressing women or killing babies. Oppressing women or killing babies. Oppressing women or killing babies. Is there no medium between oppressing women and killing babies? Like, yes, Republicans see it as killing babies. Yes, Democrats see it as oppressing women. The way I see it, I wish that we could all just compromise, because 68% of Americans agree that first trimester abortions are okay. Can we just compromise on that? Because I do think that it is a baby, but it's more of a baby the longer you wait, right? And I do think it's oppressing women, but I think it's oppressing women more and more the closer to the beginning you are. So that's why first trimester is such a good compromise, okay? I don't think it's oppressing women to give 3 months to make this choice, right? I would say it's oppressing women if we were restricting medically necessary abortions, which we're not. Not even the reddest of red states restrict medically necessary abortions. And then lastly, school shootings. You know how many school shootings there were last year? 3. You know the odds of you as a student dying in a school shooting this year are? 1 in 1.5 million. You know how many school shootings there were in 2018? 11. The amount of school shooting incidents per year varies wildly. And it's not because government did something or didn't do something. It's just because these are individuals making individual decisions based on their individual circumstances. And the government can't just fix it with a magic wand. Europe has 80 million guns and hardly any school shootings. Yes, the United States has way more than that, but it's about way more than just having guns. If politicians are trying to scare you about something that has a 1 in 1.5 million chance of happening to you, don't vote for that person. Also, if anyone wants to pay me $200,000 for making these videos, like, I'm down.
Yeah, so he mentioned the $200,000. Again, I don't know if those kids people are just paying them $200,000. There's other TikTokers that are signed to that group, especially this really big account called Under the Desk News. So I don't know how they're dispersing that money or what's the agreement there anyway, but they're obviously left-wing, and those kids are obviously shills. Like Harry, his Twitter account has existed since he was 8 or something, or 8 or 11 or some really young. It's like things aren't adding up there at all in the least bit. So, but back to the idea of what he was saying when about oppressing women or killing babies, is there a good alternative in the middle? And where he thinks about he says that it's more of a baby, right, if we wait. No. what does that mean? Like perhaps your perception of it, it's more of a baby, but that doesn't make it true. And I can understand how you can perceive it to be differently, but it's just not the case. Babies are in the first trimester are very developed by the end of it. All their major organs have pretty much formed. But I don't know where he got his numbers from. I don't totally doubt it, but a majority of Americans do not. I'm just quoting from my book right here, but the stats are from a Harvard Harris poll. A majority of Americans do not believe. Let me back up a little bit. I said. Obama once upon a time said that abortion was like. He was asked, when does a child's human rights begin? And so that he said it was above his pay grade, which is really egregious because you obviously have an answer because you were going to sign legislation related to the unborn or whatever. So you just didn't want to say. And so, anyway, I said, if that's the case, why not err on the side of caution? Talking about it's above my pay grade. He doesn't know. Why not err on the side of caution? If you thought there was a possibility a baby was laying directly in front of your right tire, would you put the car in drive and hit the gas, or would you get out and bring the infant to safety? A majority of Americans do not believe in hitting the gas. 37% of Americans only want abortion exceptions for rape, incest, and when the life of the mother is in danger. So that's 37%. That is a plurality. 23% don't believe abortion should be past 15 weeks. That means a majority of Americans don't believe in the restrictions imposed on by Roe v. Wade. 18% don't believe abortion should be allowed past 23 weeks, which is around the time of fetal viability. Only 10% believe abortion should be allowed for up to 9 months, and even that percentage is staggeringly high. So, that's from like the Harris Harvard poll. They did this like right. I don't know if it was right after Roe v. Wade, or it might have been right after the leak. One or the two. One or two. It's cited in the book anyway. So a lot of Americans, again, 37% of Americans only want abortion for exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother when it's in danger. And so so that's a plurality that only want those kind of circumstances. Everything that's inherently human about you, he said, it's more of a baby as time goes on. I'm not sure what that means. Is it more alive? Is it more human as time goes on? Everything inherently human or whatever's in your nature is present, or everything is there for that when you are conceived, like at the moment of conception, right? Especially by the time the woman finds out she's actually pregnant. So this idea that you're more human or more alive or whatever, you're more developed, but you're more developed, from the time that you're freshly out the womb to the time when you're a few weeks later, or I saw my nephew just walking the other day at, someone posted a video in our sister chat, and he was just walking and walking. I'm just like, the nerve of him to walk like that. Like he's just too grown right now. And I can just remember like a couple weeks ago, I'm just like, I know you can walk. I know you can walk. Just go ahead and do it. Like, I know you're strong enough. And he would just kind of stand a little bit, and he would move, like if you held his hand or whatever, he'd move his legs a little bit, but he wouldn't take the initiative to go on his own. And that's how babies are or whatever. But I'm just like, I know you're strong enough, do it. So, there's such big changes that happen with a child as they grow and develop, but that he's not less human like a couple weeks ago versus when he can walk now. That was more than a couple weeks ago, I guess, but he's not more human now, and he's not less human than his brother who is 7, and he's not less, his brother who's 7, he's not less human than I am as a woman who's 33. Like, we're all human and alive. Everything inherent about our nature is present again at the moment of conception. So I can understand people can't seem to wrap their heads around it and get it, but is it more of a bit? No, not really. Not really. So he said the choice between oppressing women and killing babies, oppressing women, killing babies. So he knows it's killing babies, right? And he said, but it's oppressing women if they can't have the abortion. So is there kind of compromise somewhere like in the first trimester or after the first trimester? To be frank, I only think there's really 2 consistent positions here. people can disagree with me, and I'm sure a lot of people will. Maybe a lot of pro-life people too. I only think there's two consistent positions. One is that you protect life when it begins, right? And maybe we can debate it. It's really at conception. That's the point. But even if people said like when there's a heartbeat, that's basically going to virtually get rid of abortion, right? Because women don't tend to find out much earlier than that. Well, by the time you go to the doctor, there's pretty much a heartbeat that's detectable. What they'll do is just try to say that's not really a heartbeat, which is what they do, right? So protecting the life, unless the life of the mother is like legitimately like hanging in the balance or something, you have to do triage and then like prioritize one or another. That's different. But we're assuming that in these scenarios that both of them can live healthy and fine, right? So there's a position of you protect it from conception, and then the other position is that you just allow the woman's bodily autonomy to fully reign and no limitations. As a matter of fact, I saw a live earlier today on TikTok, and so their position was bodily autonomy. And I was just thinking, like, in my head, like, oh, well, I wonder when she's going to have limitations. And she's like, no limitations. And people are like, oh. And I was like, that's actually a consistent position. Because if you say, I'm assuming the thinking is, it's not oppressive because at that point in time, by the time the first trimester is over, the woman has enough time to have decided. And most abortions happen early on, right? So really, if you want to get rid of abortions, that's really not the way to go. You're still going to have so many hundreds of thousands of babies who are killed. So that's not really a good compromise for the pro-life movement. And it's not really something that the pro-choice movement really likes all that much either. Because, and to be frank, I don't really think from their perspective, the pro-choice perspective, that it's actually very fair either. And people might be like, what do you mean? I'm just being honest. Okay, so if the reasons why you might get an abortion in the first trimester can be the same in the second trimester or the third trimester, even the third one. I have a friend I've had her on my show before to talk about her abortion story. And she was in high school and she had it pretty late. And she kind of didn't know what to do. She was mulling it over. She was afraid to tell her mom. She was with a guy who she loved, but he didn't really care anything for her. Looking for love in all the wrong places, that kind of story. And so she eventually told her mom. Her mom was really disappointed. But her mom said it's your choice. And ultimately, she decided to have an abortion. And the reason she decided to have an abortion is people like medical issues. It wasn't a medical issue. The reason she had an abortion is because she wanted a blank slate. Those were her words. Literally her words. So and she regrets it now, by the way. But she had the abortion, and it was so late. It was a 2-day procedure. And so here she is. She wants a blank slate. She's in her senior year. And she goes to the clinic, and they start her on this 2-day procedure. And her anesthesia doesn't work. So she can feel the doctor tugging on her insides, preparing her for her, to get her cervix and stuff ready. And she's just in pain, like, and basically cries and passes out. And how she described, she has a book herself where she wrote about this stuff. And how she described was just like a horror scene, waking up and then her mom finding her in so much pain and her mom taking her home and stuff. And they had to end up paying like more money for more anesthesia. So she'd be knocked out when they finished the job. And so she looks back on it now and she knows that back then she just wanted a blank slate, but she was being selfish. And another tragic thing is if you mention abortion to her, like she can still feel remnants of that pain. She had like post-traumatic stress from it. When she talks about it, she can feel like her stomach just doing all kinds of turns. And I didn't know about this till the longest time until she wrote her book, and I'm reading through it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So you never know what the women in your life who may have done. There's women who I know who are staunchly pro-life, but who had an abortion back in the day, and they know that they did a horrible, terrible, evil thing, and they do regret abortion. But yeah. She wanted a blank slate. Reasons why people might have them later are similar reasons why they may have them earlier. 86% of women who have abortions, this is CDC numbers, are unwed. And a lot of women have abortions because they don't want to raise a kid alone. They don't want their lives to change too dramatically. They don't know how they'll pay for them. A lot of reasons like that, like rape, incest, life of the mother, illness of a child. Those make up like 5% of abortions. And in America, we have like about 1 million a year, like over 900,000, according to like Guttmacher Institute. There's like 800, high 800,000 to 900,000, right? So if that's the case, and most abortions are, basically alternative birth control, just to be frank, out of some kind of convenience. People don't like when you say that, but when I say convenience, I don't mean that it was a happy thing that you just did on Tuesday afternoon. I mean that you didn't have to do it. You didn't have to. It wasn't some kind of emergency or something like that. You came to grips with it or whatever. Maybe it was heartbreaking, but you didn't have to do it, but you decided to do it. Okay, that's what I mean. Like one time someone was like, I hate when they say it's out of convenience. And then she went on to explain why she had an abortion. It was just because she wanted to be in a better financial situation when she had her child. I'm like, how is that not convenient? Or people will do it because they want to finish school or they got a new job. Those are issues of convenience. You don't want to think of it that way, but that's just, it's true nonetheless. So let's say that, again, most women who have abortions, they're unwed. They're women who are unmarried. Most of them are from the ages 20 to 40. Like, I think it's like 87% or something. It's high 80s. I don't remember off the top of my head. It's in my book though. They're between the ages of 20 to 40. So a lot of these people aren't kids making oopsies, right? A lot of them are grown-ups. So, having consensual sex, by the way. So if they are like, I don't want to raise a kid alone, I can't afford or whatever, and that's how they feel at week 11 when they have an abortion, how come the same woman or a woman in the same circumstance or whatever, but it's week 16 or something, and they thought they were with the love of their life and they cheated on them or something and they break up and he moves out what if they don't have to move or whatever, but she just breaks up with her boyfriend and now she's raising a child alone and she decides she doesn't want to do that and she doesn't know how she's going to pay for the child alone. How are her reasons at 16 weeks less valid than a woman who makes a decision at 11 weeks? How is it less valid? So pro-choice people who advocate for like no limitations basically and really, really late-term abortions, they don't want to limit late-term abortions to just medical necessity. Some people think that people only have it for medical necessity. That's not true. There's some women who don't even find out they're pregnant till super late, right? But they want all options to be open for reasons like that. So if it's about the woman's choice and not oppressing her and her being able to exercise what's best for her and her body autonomy, etc., how can you say that it's a good compromise to have a line after the first trimester? If her reasons are exactly the same and can happen later in when she finds out she's pregnant, or what if she doesn't find out until later? So I don't really, so if you're going to argue that, I don't really think that's fair. I don't think that's a good compromise. I know people like the number. They like the idea of it. They just want to like find a way to split the baby. But the problem with splitting the baby is that you're splitting a baby. That's the problem. You're still splitting a baby. So either you protect the baby or you don't. And the splitting the baby, that's from the King Solomon story in the Bible. And when they found out like who was okay with splitting the baby, like that's not the mother. the person who doesn't want the baby to die, that's the mother. That's the mother of the child. That's the person who deserves the baby, not the person who's willing to split it. So I don't think it makes sense. And to the oppressing woman thing, how? Like I know people say that you're forcing women. How I have nothing to do with your pregnancy. I am a female. I guarantee you, I have nothing to do with your pregnancy. I didn't get you pregnant. I can't get you pregnant unless I kidnapped you and get a turkey baster. But I need a sample from somewhere. I cannot get you pregnant, right? You likely had consensual sex with someone, and for whatever reason, you don't want to have their baby. For whatever reason. but the baby's made. So you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with, again, we started earlier with gender people upset about their biology and going through puberty, and they're like, oh, I'm being tortured because I have to, you won't let me take puberty blockers. It's like, no, that's your biology. That's nature. You're not mad at me. You're mad at nature. Like, I'm not, who's oppressing you? It's nature. It's just your DNA. It's something that humans do. Our bodies as females, they're preparing for pregnancy. That's why we have our awful periods. Our uterine lining builds up, and then we're not pregnant, so they shed. And it sucks. It sucks, right? But if you are pregnant, the natural process is then birth. It's gonna happen. Either you're gonna have a baby that comes out alive or comes out dead. You'll be stillborn, or maybe you'll have a miscarriage. But if everything goes like according to plan, was supposed to be, correct and right with the world, you will have a baby. So the natural progression now is just you having your baby. If no one does anything, the neutral position is no one does anything and you have the baby. That's the actual neutral position. The pro-choice position is you don't believe that child should be protected from violence. An abortion is the initiation of force, right? So you initiate the force and the baby is killed. And then you still give birth, because birth is just the emergence from you, right? And so you give birth to a dead baby, whether you have to catch it coming out of you hovering over a toilet, or whether it's late term and you have to still deliver it, or they suck it all up, or they dismember it, rip it apart. Like, one way or another, that baby is coming out of you. It's coming out of you. So you can choose life, and again, the Turnaway study, by the way, 96% of women who are turned away from abortion, died abortion, whatever, they don't regret not killing their baby. They form bonds with their children. They come to they love them. And about half of them are glad and have no regrets after just a week of being turned away from abortion. That's pretty amazing, right? A week can make a difference. With a woman being like, I'm glad I didn't kill that baby I have. A week. Just a week can make a difference. That's crazy. That's crazy. And the Turnaway study looks after 5 years, right? So if you got all these women who wouldn't really want to kill their baby if they actually had their baby. But if they really don't want to take care of the baby, you can have an adoption plan. I don't think adoption is a solution, but it's definitely better than the alternative. So no one is oppressing women. But we don't talk a lot about how a lot of women who come to regret their abortions or talk about their abortions, that they felt pressured to do it by their boyfriends or by their families and, life circumstances, whatever. And I know women who had abortions because their boyfriends, and then their boyfriends broke up with them. There's one pro-lifer who I'm friends with on Twitter and TikTok and stuff. Her parents took her to the abortion clinic. She wrote on her forms as a last-ditch effort that she wanted to keep her baby, but Planned Parenthood didn't care. They wanted that sale. Cha-ching. So who's oppressing women? Besides the women that we kill in the womb. We are oppressing women, but it's not it is from abortion, but it's not from the stopping you from ending their life. But people will say, well, if a woman doesn't want to have the baby, the only way to get rid of it is to allow her to have the abortion. If we don't find those acceptable excuses, if someone really wants to go kill their neighbor, or someone else really wants to do something, we don't just grant them the freedom, the liberty to do that. You just kind of gotta suck it up. If you make the baby, or you don't have to make the baby. You don't have to make the baby. Again, 86% of abortions are from unmarried women. And I don't know the numbers for repeat offenders too well, but in Michigan, I looked at the numbers and I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I can tell you that there's women who are repeat offenders, or there's women who are, they've had a baby, so they know what it's like. They know it's a life. They know the process, whatever. They've carried a child to term, or they've carried a couple to term, but they go out and then they have the abortion. So, a lot of women know kind of have an idea that it's a life, or, you know, maybe they don't consider it as much of a life, but they know the process. They know how babies are made, definitely. Some of them have made a few in their day, but still, like, about half of women who have abortions were taking contraception at the time that they were pregnant. So you can say, well, women, you know, they tried to do the right thing and they still ended up getting pregnant. Like, half of them did. Half of them did. But you could, you know, not make babies with men you don't intend to father their children. So no, it's not oppressing women. You're not more of a baby if you wait a bit. And the compromise with the weeks, I just don't think they make a lot of sense. Unless, especially if it's from the perspective of oppressing the woman, like you want to give them time. Now, if the compromise is, well, it's early enough that it won't, the fetus or whatever, it's like a, I don't know, like a wash. if you kill them, because how will they know or whatever, and they won't feel the pain, etc. It's kind of like Skynet and Terminator. Like, you know that in the movie Terminator, Skynet comes from the future to deal with John Connor, right? And so their goal with dealing with John Connor then is to stop him before he can ever become the John Connor in the future who takes out Skynet. So that's their goal, right? The whole, like, I don't know if I was about to say Star Wars, Terminator series is Skynet trying to stop John Connor from stopping them, and then John Connor and Sarah Connor, them trying to stop Judgment Day, so they never have to go through it. But, you know, fate, etc., blah, 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 it all continues. So I mentioned that because you know well aware that same baby at like 16 weeks is the same baby it was at 8 weeks, right? It's the same baby. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get rid of it before it's too big of a moral conundrum for you. It's the same person. The same inherent value that it has at 16 weeks or 18 weeks or whatever, 24, once it's viable, whatnot. Same that it has at 6 weeks. Same baby. Same baby. Your perception of it, sure, could change. Our perception of how much we value each other, like human beings walking around that you like, dislike, of different ethnicities and races, etc., changes. I wrote a post today, put on YouTube and Facebook. I don't trust people enough to be able to pick and choose when I am valuable. That's why we need consistent standards, and just saying, hey, I think first trimester is a good idea. Why? Why? Why is, like, you know, if you pick 12 weeks or something, why is it okay to kill that baby at 11 weeks, 6 days, as opposed to 12 weeks, 1 day, or week 13 or something? You really think someone's life is worth a week? You really think it's worth a week? And if it's not worth a week, why can't you just wait a couple more weeks and get to a couple of months and then just birth the baby? So I don't think the compromise makes a lot of sense. Commend him for at least acknowledging it's bad, but just being like, let's split the baby. Again, you're still splitting a baby. Anyway, thank you guys. Oh, someone said I was cute. Thanks. Just looking through your comments a little bit. Someone said it will affect you the rest of your life. It will. It might. I did mention the Turnaway study. I love the 96% figure, but they don't mention a lot about women not regretting having the abortion if they're turned away. They talk a lot about women not regretting that they have abortions, and people who do things that are terrible or awful. It doesn't have to be abortion, but they will convince themselves that they have no regret about stuff anyway. It's just how human beings are. They'll convince themselves to not have regret. But the turn away study only looks at 5 years, and I kind of think that's too short to look at whether people regret their abortions. And they might say that they don't regret it, but that doesn't mean that they don't acknowledge that it was a bad thing, you know, or etc. But some women that I talked to who had abortions, it took longer than 5 years to kind of reach that revelation that they made a mistake. Like one woman, Deborah Tilden, she talked about how she didn't realize until years later that abortion she had with her husband, but it was right before they were married. They, were living in sin a bit. You know, that it caused problems in her marriage that she didn't understand. It caused problems with her mental health that she didn't understand. It caused issues with her ability to bond with her children that she didn't understand. She was sad on Mother's Day, didn't know why. She was sad on, the date that, her child would have been, due. Didn't quite understand until years later. And as she was like going through a process of healing and getting therapy and stuff for it, like with other groups of women who went through the same thing, she found out that other women had similar experiences. So I think 5 years is kind of too short to look at women and say, oh yeah, I totally made the right decision. Because it may take time to sink in. And by the way, when people say they don't regret it or they have no regrets or whatever and they don't feel bad, I don't think I've ever heard a woman say that who I legitimately believe. Because a lot of them can't even admit that it was taking a life or whatever. And the way they get so defensive about it, I've just never really believed it. But I'm not the one they have to convince. They have to convince themselves of that. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Please go to blackteennews.com, check out different content that I have on my website, etc. Please check out my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. You can get it on paperback or you can get it on ebook. And I hope you guys really enjoy it. My sister Tina did the amazing artwork for that, but it covers theology, of course, obviously, but it covers philosophy, it covers biology, it covers rights. It goes through all sorts of different things and really lays out how abortion should be really incompatible with Christianity, not just because of particular scriptures like, oh, thou shalt not kill, but like your actual kind of character as a Christian. It should really be against your nature to support, not just do it, but to support it at all. So it really lays that out. It also talks about objective morality, why we need it, why, even if you don't believe in inherent value and intrinsic value and things like that, why it's important to at least act like it, to live life like you do. So it's got a lot of great stuff in it, and the closing is super strong too. I think the whole thing's really good, but I really, really poured my heart and soul into this. It took about a year to write, and usually that's kind of long for me. Usually I can pop out a book within like 6 months or something, but my fastest book that I wrote, I think I wrote The Color of God's Eyes in like a month. And that's like one of my most popular books. That's my historical fiction fantasy series. It's about a slave in the Civil War era who discovers that when she was purchased as a young girl on the plantation and stuff, that she was actually selected because they sensed that she had particular powers. So it's, imagine like X-Men meets the Civil War. So go ahead and check out the book. As I mentioned earlier, like, we got to keep building the culture and building alternatives and stuff. So some of my stories are darker than others or whatever. There's a lot of really good kind of conservative, wholesome values and stuff, but some of my stories are on the darker side, but so many of my stories are about overcoming the darker nature of your humanity. I think I said that weird, but humanity. And so sometimes it might start off darker, but I don't glorify evil in my books, and sometimes you got to go through the darkness to find the light. So anyway, if you're interested in my books, you can go to blackteennews.com, and if you hit the merchandise button, there's a banner that'll take you to my book website, or you just search my name on Amazon, Christina Elbar. Also check out different merch that we got at the store, like the I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt and all kind of goodies. And if you like what I do here, please consider going to the website and leaving a donation. It costs a stream, run my website, all kinds of good stuff. So if you can support, I thank you. God bless you guys, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.